Hi everyone, this is Josh Culp. We are learning Daf Mem Heh of Masechet Nedarim. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mishnah that's the focus, and maybe a little bit about how I think this reflects generally on rabbinic law and the rabbis. So just the first line of the Mishnah, the first sentence, Hamotzi et ishto mishum shemra. So somebody who divorces his wife because there was a rumor that she had committed adultery. This is just a rumor, not a fact. He is not allowed to remarry her. Or if it's because of a vow, assumedly it was either a vow he took or a vow that she took that would have interfered with the marriage, lo yachzir, he can't also remarry her. And the interpretation in the Talmud, which I think is probably closer, based on the Tosefta, closer to the original meaning of the Mishnah, is that the rabbis fear, this is a bit of a complicated process, so you have to follow along, the rabbis fear that he divorces her because of a certain reason. He says, I'm divorcing you because I suspect you of adultery or because of a vow. And then it turns out either that the suspicion was false or that the vow could have been released. He's going to say, had I known that I was divorcing my wife under false premises, I wouldn't have divorced her. He's going to retroactively annul the get. And therefore, right, to avoid that, the rabbi said that we have to tell him that he's not allowed to ever remarry her, basically telling him that the divorce is final. Now, what I think is very interesting over here is, one is that the rabbis seem to think that the husband has the power to retroactively annul a get, to say that it was based on false premises. They could have really made legislation that said that you can't annul a get, as opposed to saying he's not allowed to remarry her. And to a certain extent, I think that that's the flavor of the Mishnah over here. But the rabbis could have legislated away this problem in some other way. I can't tell you exactly why they didn't do it that way. Maybe they just really believe that contracts or legal matters done under false premises can be undone, which is probably overall a decent or good halacha, that if somebody goes into a contract with understanding, with a false premise, that he can undo the contract. And therefore, in order to avoid overturning the entire system of retroactively annulling contracts, the rabbis made a different kind of legislation telling him that he cannot remarry her. But effectively what they're trying to say is he cannot annul the get. And you kind of also see here just more of a reflection on rabbinic views of divorce. On the one hand, the rabbis allowing men to have power that really could be very disruptive. Annulling a get could be have terrible consequences on the woman. On the other hand, they're also protecting the woman from such consequences by saying that he cannot remarry her, which I think encapsulates a little bit the flavor of rabbinic approach to divorce law. On the one hand, they recognize that there are problematic divorce laws. On the other hand, the biggest problem is that the husband is the only one who can initiate divorce. And they live with that system. They don't really overtly change that system. And yet they also recognize that it is a problematic law, and they try on the margins to sort of find ways around that. We'll see some of that throughout our chapter. So it's something to pay attention to. The rabbis feeling that they're stuck with a certain system. Perhaps it's divine, perhaps it's ancient, perhaps it's ancient tradition. And the other hand, having enough of a moral compass not to say that just because something is the law, that must mean that it's moral, which is, I think, an interesting approach to law, and something that we should think about and pay attention to on other occasions.